Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really aggressive, high-stakes situation that's unfolding right now down in the Caribbean. And the big question, the one at the absolute center of this strategy is, is this massive U.S. military deployment really about stopping drug networks? Or is it actually a calculated push for regime change against Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro? And maybe more importantly, how does the administration manage to sell those two goals as basically the same mission?
Yeah, our sources are painting a picture of really an urgent situation. We've got the Trump administration sending some serious military power down there.
Series is right. We're talking about 10,000 U.S. troops.
10,000, wow.
Yep, plus warships, high-end aircraft like F-35 fighter jets. I mean, it's a major deployment.
And the official line from the administration is that this is all about tackling, and I'm quoting here, narco-terrorist drug dealers trying to poison the U.S.
Exactly. They've specifically named Nicolás Maduro, calling him a narco-king and painting him as a direct threat to national security. So they're tying him personally to the drug trade as a national security issue for the U.S.
Precisely. And this whole forceful approach, championed by people like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, it really signals the administration's plan here. They're linking these aggressive anti-drug operations directly to the goal of, well, political transition in Venezuela.
The regime change goal.
Right. The argument they're making is that stabilizing South America, getting Maduro out, is essential for U.S. homeland security.
How so? What's the connection they're drawing?
They're arguing it's about controlling migration flows, basically. A more prosperous, stable South America means fewer people trying to come to the U.S. border. That's the pitch.
Okay, so our mission today really is to dive into the evidence, try to define this multi-pronged strategy.
And look at the sheer scale of the military action, which is significant.
Yeah, and then unpack the fallout, both the debates happening right here at home, constitutionally speaking, and the global reaction, which has been pretty intense.
Absolutely. It's a complex picture with a lot of moving parts.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The strategy seems to be running on these two parallel tracks, as you said. What did the sources really pinpoint as the two main intertwined objectives here?
Well, the sources are pretty clear it's a dual mission. And how they blend those two is really the key. First, you've got the political goal, which is, frankly, the removal of Nicolás Maduro. The U.S. administration views him as an illegitimate leader. So the stated aim is to liberate Venezuela, restore democracy, and they're backing interim President Juan Guaido to achieve that.
And the justification for that goal, the strategic piece, is the migration angle we mentioned.
Yeah, that's the suggested motivation. Strengthen U.S. security, foster prosperity down south, and hopefully that stems the flow of people heading north. That's the theory.
Okay, so regime change is definitely a core political aim. But the face of the operation, the part getting all the military muscle, is framed as this huge counter-narcotics effort.
Exactly right. The second objective is presented almost purely as homeland defense. It's all about a critical crackdown on illegal drug trafficking. You hear administration officials talking about stopping the country from being flooded by illegal drugs, stopping these narco-terrorist drug dealers in their tracks.
It's a fascinating connection they're making, framing regime change as a drug war. Why is that specific framing, do you think, so important for them?
Well, it's really quite clever strategically. It gives them immediate political cover and legal cover, too. Think about it. U.S. federal prosecutors indicted Maduro. They tied him directly to narco-terrorism charges.
Right, so it shifts the narrative.
Completely. It stops being about, potentially invading a sovereign nation just to change its leader. Suddenly, it's about conducting military operations against designated terrorist organizations.
Like the Cartel of the Suns they mentioned.
Exactly. They designated this Venezuelan group, the Cartel of the Suns, as a terrorist organization. And you had Attorney General Pam Bondi calling Maduro himself one of the world's most notorious narco-traffickers. It reframes the whole thing as protecting Americans at home, not just meddling in another country's politics.
And that legal framing, it's backed by some serious pressure. We saw that enormous $50 million bounty for information leading to Maduro's arrest. I mean, $50 million for a head of state. Is that common?
That amount, $50 million, it's definitely significant. It's designed to send a really loud, undeniable message, both to people inside Maduro's circle and, frankly, to the whole world.
So what here for our listeners, how does this connect back?
Well, the administration makes sure every single action, the indictment, that huge bounty, the massive troop deployment, it's all explicitly tied back to protecting the American homeland from drugs and managing border security by promoting stability down south.
Okay, this is where it gets, I think, really interesting. The sources detail a military response that just seems huge, way bigger than what you'd normally expect for just anti-smuggling patrols. What specific military actions are we talking about?
Oh, yeah. It goes way beyond a typical, say, Coast Guard operation. We mentioned the 10,000 troops surged into the Caribbean, warships, advanced aircraft.
Including F-35s, right? High-end fighter jets?
Exactly, F-35s. And analysts pointed this out, that kind of force, especially the advanced jets, it's far more than you'd need just to chase down, smugglers and speedboats.
And these forces aren't just sitting there, are they? They're actively engaging.
That's a key point. The sources report the U.S. military has actually conducted strikes against boats they allege were carrying drugs.
Strikes, like kinetic action.
Yes, kinetic strikes. At least 9 boats reportedly hit, and there have been fatalities mentioned. That's a much higher level of force than usual.
So how do they justify using lethal force like that without a formal declaration of war against Venezuela?
Well, that's where the legal framing comes back in. The administration declared what's called a non-international armed conflict against these designated drug cartels.
Okay, explain that. Why is declaring a non-international armed conflict so important here?
It's basically a crucial legal workaround. See, if the U.S. were directly targeting the Venezuelan state, the government itself, they'd legally need Congress to either declare war or pass an AUMF, an authorization for use of military force.
Threat the constitutional process.
Exactly. But by designating the cartels as the enemy, as non-state actors in this non-international armed conflict, the administration claims the authority to use lethal force internationally.
Without needing Congress to declare war specifically on Venezuela.
Precisely. It provides a kind of legal umbrella for these aggressive strikes, framing it as counterterrorism or counternarcotics, not state-on-state warfare.
And beyond the boat strikes, our sources also confirm the Trump administration secretly authorized the CIA to conduct potentially lethal covert operations inside Venezuela itself.
Yes, that's another layer. Lethal covert ops authorized.
Plus, the rhetoric from the president has been really dialed up, openly warning Venezuelan planes could be shot down if they interfered.
Right, and the administration has pointedly refused to rule out strikes inside Venezuela or even putting U.S. ground troops there eventually. They're keeping all options open.
That level of threat really seems to show how deeply intertwined the drug war angle is with the broader goal of, well, pressure and regime change.
It certainly suggests the counter-narcotics mission provides leverage for the political aims.
Now, using executive power like this, deploying lethal force without a formal war declaration, that always stirs up constitutional arguments, doesn't it? How's Congress reacting?
Yeah, it definitely raises big questions about checks and balances. The sources say the president actually dared Congress to try and stop the operations.
Dared them? How?
The bet was basically that lawmakers wouldn't want to be seen voting against stopping drugs, especially when it's framed as, protecting Americans from being poisoned. It's politically difficult.
Okay, but politics aside, there is pushback on the principle of executive power here, right? From both sides of the aisle.
Oh, absolutely. You've got a bipartisan group stepping up. People like Senator Rand Paul, a Republican known for his non-interventionist stance, and Democrats like Senator Tim Kaine. They're using the War Powers Resolution. That's the law that forces Congress to vote on whether to approve or block military actions that weren't authorized beforehand.
So they're trying to force a vote.
They're insisting that, look, if the administration really believes war is necessary here, even if it's framed differently, then Congress has to do its constitutional duty. They need to debate it and pass an AUMF. That's the proper way to authorize force.
And the argument is that bypassing Congress undermines the whole separation of powers.
That's the core constitutional argument from the critics, yes.
What I find really fascinating, though, is that this isn't just a simple Democrat versus Republican thing. There's apparently a split within the conservative base, within MAGA world itself.
Yeah, that internal division is quite telling, actually. It shows how complex this policy is, even for supporters of the administration. You have figures who are normally very supportive, like Laura Loomer, Steve Bannon, actually questioning this mission.
Why? What are their concerns?
They're worried it could turn into another endless war. It taps into that non-interventionist America First sentiment. Their fear, and they've pointed fingers specifically at Secretary of State Rubio, is that maybe the drug war is being used as a kind of Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse for what?
For getting the U.S. involved in another costly regime change intervention abroad, something that goes against the promise of avoiding foreign entanglements unless it's absolutely vital for defending the homeland.
So you've got domestic critics hitting the strategy and the execution. Okay, let's pivot globally. How are Maduro's allies, the big global players and Venezuela's neighbors, reacting to the U.S., showing this kind of military force?
Well, the reaction from countries supporting Maduro and even some neighbors has been pretty strong. Condemnation, mostly, and also signs of military readiness. The Venezuelan government itself reacted very aggressively. They mobilized their Bolivarian militia, claimed they got 8 million Venezuelans mobilized, which is a huge number.
8 million, really?
That's the claim. And they reinforced troops along their borders, land and sea, declared the country at maximum preparedness. They're clearly treating this as a serious threat, possibly an imminent invasion.
And what about internationally? Russia and China, they back Maduro. What are they doing?
They're providing diplomatic cover, mainly at the UN. Russia, for instance, at the Security Council, slammed the U.S. for unprecedented pressure and military threats. They basically dismissed the whole narco-terrorism charge against Maduro as something fit for a Hollywood script.
Implying it's fabricated for political reasons.
That's the clear implication. And China echoed that, rejecting threats or the use of force in international relations. They both see it as American interference, and they're pushing back against efforts to destabilize Maduro's government at the UN.
What might be most damaging, though, for the U.S. position is the pushback from within the region itself. Even countries that have historically been close U.S. partners.
Yeah, that's a really key friction point. Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, he came out and accused Washington of murdering innocents at sea after those boat strikes happened.
Wow, that's strong language from a neighbor. How did the Trump administration react to that?
Swiftly and harshly. They reportedly fired back, calling President Petro himself an illegal drug dealer, and actually suspended economic aid to Colombia.
So, punishing a critic, even an ally.
It definitely shows the administration was willing to use pretty hard power economic pressure, too, against anyone who criticized this dual mission, even traditional partners.
And finally, there's this looming threat of escalation. Maduro's interior minister, Diosdado Cabello, he actually brought up the Vietnam War, said any attempt to topple the regime would drag the U.S. into a bloody quagmire. That's a pretty stark warning.
It really is, and it connects right back to the core risk here. The U.S. is facing a regime that's actively mobilizing its people, has powerful geopolitical friends ready to push back diplomatically, maybe even militarily. That quagmire warning, it's a very direct way of reminding the U.S. that a full-on intervention wouldn't be some quick, easy thing. It could get very messy, very protracted.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. The core conflict seems to be this. You have an aggressive U.S. policy trying to hit two targets at once, stop drug flow from what they call an illegitimate regime, and force a democratic transition.
Right, two goals intertwined.
But the strategy they're using, relying heavily on military force, justified legally as this non-international armed conflict against cartels, it's kicked up a storm.
Yeah, a storm both at home, with critics raising constitutional alarms about the president's war powers.
And internationally, with major powers like Russia and China pushing back hard, and Maduro himself threatening Syria's resistance.
Essentially, the policy is a high-stakes bet. It's gambling that focusing on the war on drugs provides enough political cover to achieve regime change, maybe without needing the full commitment of a formally declared war.
So, considering Maduro's promising an armed struggle, and his allies explicitly warning about the U.S. getting sucked into a bloody quagmire like Vietnam, here's the final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Does the U.S. priority stopping these powerful drug cartels and forcing a political change in Venezuela actually justify the very real risks of getting drawn into a long, potentially disastrous ground conflict in South America, a conflict that could end up destabilizing the whole region even further?